Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me. We have two significant storms developing, and they could certainly have an impact on your Thanksgiving plans. These systems are preparing to bring considerable snowfall, a possibility of strong storms, and a push of very cold Arctic air. What makes this particular weather setup so noteworthy is that all the necessary ingredients are coming together at the same time. We will see two very different air masses collide on more than one occasion, and each of these encounters could produce a different result. From a risk of strong tornadoes today, to potential snow totals as high as 24 inches just in time for Thanksgiving, this is a weather pattern that we must watch very carefully. Any small change in the timing or the path of our jet stream will have major effects on who might see severe weather and who will get heavy snow, and where the most significant travel disruptions could occur during the busiest travel week of the year. So, in this forecast, we are going to carefully break down how these two storms are expected to unfold and what you will want to know before you head out on the road for the holiday. We will begin our discussion by taking a look at the jet stream, as this is the current that will steer our weather pattern over the next couple of weeks here in the United States. Let us start with what is happening today and tomorrow. Right now, we have a large storm system situated in the Central Plains, and it is forecast to bring a risk of significant severe weather, including the possibility of tornadoes today and tomorrow for an area stretching from Texas all the way to the Ohio Valley. So, this is a large area that we are monitoring, and we will discuss that in greater detail in just a moment. As we move into Tuesday, this storm system will track into the Ohio Valley, and at the same time, a system known as an Alberta Clipper will move down from Canada. That will arrive in the Northern Plains on Tuesday, and it is expected to bring the potential for heavy snowfall across North Dakota, Minnesota, and even into parts of Wisconsin and the upper peninsula of Michigan as we head through Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. A major snowfall event is certainly on the horizon for the middle of the week. Then by the time we arrive at Thursday, which is Thanksgiving Day, we are expecting a very large dip in the jet stream across the Northern Plains, extending down into Texas and across the southeast. This dip is going to pull in a great deal of colder air, and it will cause temperatures to drop by as much as 20 to 30 degrees in some places as we go into Thanksgiving and Black Friday. In addition, this low pressure system will be accompanied by very strong winds from the west. These winds will increase our risk for lake effect snow, particularly for areas in the upper peninsula of Michigan. This also includes the areas around Lake Erie and Lake Ontario, with a little bit of lake effect snow also in the forecast for the Lake Michigan shoreline. Now, as we look toward the weekend, the forecast becomes much less certain. However, we are anticipating that a major storm system will be affecting the United States by Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. This system could bring significant severe weather, and it could also develop into a major winter storm, but there is still a great deal of uncertainty about its specific impacts and where they will be felt. The larger overview is that we expect a trough of low pressure to settle along the west coast during the first few days of December. This pattern should bring multiple large storms to the United States during the first couple of weeks of December. So please be prepared for an extremely active weather pattern as we begin the meteorological winter. Now, we have two important topics to cover in this forecast. The first is our temperature trend, and the second is the series of large storms expected over the next 10 days, which will bring severe weather, snow, and a variety of other challenges. I would like to begin with our temperature trend, as this will set the stage for what we can expect over the next 7 to 10 days. At the moment, most of the country is experiencing temperatures that are above average for this time of year, but that is about to change. By Wednesday and Thursday, a rather intense blast of cold air is going to move across the Midwest, the Northern Plains, and the Ohio Valley. This map shows the conditions for Wednesday morning, the day before Thanksgiving. You can see that things will cool down quite rapidly across the Midwest. Then, by Thursday, that cold air will have expanded, and it will cover nearly all of the Midwest, the entire Ohio Valley, and a majority of the East Coast. Our temperatures could be as much as 10 to 15 degrees below average on Friday and Saturday. That cold air will continue to settle over the entire East Coast. Then, looking ahead to Saturday and Sunday, we will likely see another very large storm develop across the Midwest and the Southern Plains. To put it in perspective, this storm is expected to be larger than the one we are dealing with over the next few days. This next system will likely bring more widespread issues, including more significant snowfall and severe weather, but it will also usher in even colder temperatures as we move into Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. So, in the grand scheme of things, Thanksgiving Day itself may be a bit of a quiet period, as you will be situated between two major storm systems. The first storm is happening just before Thanksgiving, and another very large storm is expected right after Thanksgiving. After that, we will likely continue to see more significant storms as we head into the first week of December. The weather is about to become quite active. Now, let's talk in more detail about these storms coming to the United States. We will begin with what is happening today and tomorrow. A large storm system will continue to move across the southern plains, the deep south, and the Ohio Valley today. This will bring a risk of significant severe weather for portions of Texas, Arkansas, Louisiana, and Mississippi, with damaging winds, hail, and tornadoes all being possibilities. We will examine this in greater detail in just a few minutes. Then, as we move into early Tuesday, the storm will continue its push through the Ohio Valley. Two low-pressure systems will merge into a single, stronger system over the Midwest, which will lead to snowfall across the northern plains and the upper Midwest. Meanwhile, the threat of severe weather will continue on Tuesday across the Dixie Valley and the Ohio Valley, with an additional risk of damaging winds, some hail, and a few tornadoes. As we head into Wednesday, this storm system will shift toward the East Coast. A good amount of snow is expected to fall across the upper peninsula of Michigan, and we will also see some snowfall in central Wisconsin. At the same time, an atmospheric river event will begin to strengthen, bringing heavy rain and snow to the Pacific Northwest by Wednesday and into Thanksgiving Day. On Thanksgiving, most of the United States will be fairly quiet. The primary exceptions will be the areas around the Great Lakes, where significant lake effect snow will be ongoing throughout the day on Thursday. A large storm system will also be moving into the Pacific Northwest. Otherwise, for most of us, the weather will be calm. It is, however, going to be quite chilly. We have that large blast of cold air arriving on Tuesday and Wednesday, and that will really cool things down across the Midwest, the Ohio Valley, and the Northeast. The energy from that atmospheric river event in the Pacific Northwest will then travel over the Rocky Mountains on Friday and Saturday, and this is what will form our next major storm system. Right now, that storm is forecast to arrive sometime around Friday or Saturday. It is expected to bring a variety of weather challenges, though we do not yet know the exact timing or location of these impacts. However, one thing that appears certain is that we are going to see heavy snowfall somewhere. This could very well be our biggest winter storm of the season so far. It will likely affect parts of the Midwest and perhaps the Ohio Valley on Saturday and Sunday. There will probably be some severe weather as well across the deep south in areas like Texas and the Dixie Valley. This will certainly be something to monitor closely over the weekend. Beyond this point, the forecast details become much less clear. The first few days of December could be very active, or we could see a large high-pressure system build over the East Coast and the Great Plains, which would limit storm activity for a few days. Now, the story is different if we look at the GFS computer model. It shows a completely different scenario, one that is even more significant. It suggests a large multi-day storm system developing across the Great Plains and the Midwest around the 30th and the 1st. Then, as we go toward the 2nd and 3rd of the month, which would be Tuesday or Wednesday of next week, we could potentially see another large storm system that could also bring heavy snow and ice to parts of the Midwest and the Ohio Valley. The model then shows yet another big storm forming around December 6th. So, as you can see, there are two different scenarios on the table. Essentially, one possibility is that we have one large storm followed by a couple of smaller storms. The other possibility is what the GFS model is showing, with multiple large storms overlapping for several days. But regardless of what happens, it is almost certain that we will see at least one, if not two or three, major storm systems next week. This is all because of our large-scale weather pattern, which is dominated by an area of low pressure along the west coast of the United States. This setup generally favors a storm track that moves directly across the Central Plains and the Midwest. This is where we will have two colliding air masses, which will result in severe weather and heavy rain for much of the East Coast and the Southeast. On the other side of the system, we will likely see wintry weather across the Central Plains, the Midwest, and the Ohio Valley. Now, these storms are going to bring a few different kinds of weather. One of them is the threat of snowfall. This map shows how much snow we can expect over the next few days between now and Thanksgiving morning. There will be a wide band of snow from southeastern North Dakota all the way through Minnesota and into the upper peninsula of Michigan, which will likely receive around 6 to 12 inches of snowfall. So we are talking about the potential for significant snow accumulation right before the holiday. And then over in the Great Lakes region, we are also expecting lake effect snow. That snow will really begin to accumulate on Thursday and Friday across the upper peninsula of Michigan. Now, this is where the forecast becomes more uncertain as we look to the upcoming weekend and into next week. During the first week of December, we will likely see more snowfall across the Midwest and the Northern Plains, but we do not yet know exactly where that will occur or how much snow will fall. The European computer model, by the way, shows a very similar situation for the next few days, with basically the same areas receiving significant snowfall. However, as we look into the weekend and early next week, it shows a much more significant winter storm developing across the Midwest and the Ohio Valley. So please keep in mind, there is a lot of disagreement between the models right now regarding this upcoming weekend and next week. There are certainly some significant changes on the horizon regarding that upcoming winter storm. First, let us focus on the system that is affecting us before the Thanksgiving holiday, and then we will turn our attention to the weather pattern for later in the week. As for the snowfall across the Northeast, it appears the majority of that accumulation will arrive on Thanksgiving Day or in the day immediately following. We are forecasting the possibility of 6 to 12 inches of snow, particularly for our friends in southwestern New York and even into northeastern Ohio near Cleveland, as well as the Watertown, New York area. Some locations will see very significant snowfall. In fact, our highest totals could approach 18 to 24 inches in the far southwestern corner of New York. Now, let's shift our focus to the potential for severe weather over the next few days, and we will begin with today's forecast. For today, which is Monday, a slight risk for severe weather has been issued for a region stretching from western Mississippi all the way over to the Houston, Texas area. Our primary concerns for today will be the potential for damaging straight-line winds and the development of large to very large hail. This hail threat will be a particular concern from the initial more powerful thunderstorms that formed this afternoon. It is quite possible that a few of these storms could produce hail as large as tennis balls, so please take a moment to ensure your vehicles are protected if you are in the risk area. Another notable concern for today is a 5% probability of a tornado, which is a somewhat elevated risk. This threat area extends from western Mississippi back into East Texas, where a few tornadoes will be possible. I believe we cannot entirely rule out the potential for a strong tornado or two developing today. However, that potential for a stronger tornado really depends on whether we see individual isolated thunderstorms develop ahead of the main line of storms. If those do not form, it will be much more difficult for a significant tornado threat to come to fruition. The Storm Prediction Center had previously mentioned that a higher-end threat area was possible, but at this time, there is simply not enough confidence in the data to make that determination. I agree with that assessment. There is just not enough certainty regarding strong tornadoes at this time. Looking ahead to tomorrow, which is Tuesday, we are tracking a marginal threat of severe weather. This area extends from southeastern Kentucky down into the deep south and along the Gulf Coast. A marginal risk means the threat is on the lower end, but we will still be watching for some potentially damaging winds. We could also see some hail up to the size of $50 and perhaps an isolated tornado or two. The primary window for any tornado activity on Tuesday will be during the late morning and through the early to mid-afternoon hours across that region. Now, let's discuss the timing of this severe weather in more detail. Starting with today, a very intense line of thunderstorms is already moving through the Dallas-Fort Worth area this morning. That line will be approaching Waco later this morning. As we head toward the lunch hour, we expect this line of storms to weaken slightly. At the same time, we will be watching for those individual thunderstorms to try and form around noon, just ahead of the main line. Frankly, I am not convinced that they will be very successful in developing. In my professional opinion, the best chance for any of those storms to remain isolated will be closer to sunset this evening. If that does not occur, we will still be dealing with a solid line of thunderstorms capable of producing damaging winds and a couple of possible tornadoes embedded within it. By 8 to 9 o'clock this evening, this line will continue its eastward push across the greater Houston area. It will also be moving towards central Louisiana. Then, as we get into the overnight hours, the line of storms should begin to weaken and fall apart as it crosses into Mississippi and Louisiana and eventually moves out over the Gulf of Mexico. I want to emphasize again that the tornado threat today is very conditional. It truly depends on whether any of those isolated storm cells can form ahead of the main line. If those individual cells do not develop, the overall tornado threat should remain quite low. Please do keep in mind that we may provide live coverage later today if conditions warrant it, so I encourage you to subscribe to the channel and select the notification option so you can stay informed. Now, for tomorrow, the threat of severe weather will be concentrated mostly in the late morning and afternoon. We will see numerous thunderstorms across an area stretching from southeastern Mississippi all the way into eastern Tennessee. The primary threats will be damaging winds and hail, but it is possible that a few of these storms could show enough rotation to produce a few brief tornadoes. Then, by the evening hours, these storms will be tracking into central Georgia and the Florida Panhandle. As they move into those areas, they are expected to weaken. Thank you all so much for joining me today and for placing your trust in our forecast. We will see you